Hey Stitch family, it's Andrew here. In this week's video, I want to talk to you about something that not many of you maybe think about all that often, but it impacts me a fair bit and ultimately affects everybody. And that's how members behave in the community and how do we ensure that we have a welcoming, enriching experience for all our members. Unlike the rest of the world, Stitch actually has a mission. Our mission is to make sure that everybody gets the opportunity to enrich their lives. And to do that, we need to actually make sure that everyone in the community is behaving in a way that doesn't bring other people down. Now, that's not like the real world. In the real world, you might go to a restaurant, you go to a pub, you might meet people, and unless someone breaks the law, you don't generally have a recourse to correct that behavior. It can just drive you nuts. But there's not much you can do about it. They need to break the law, and then you have to report it to the police something went really, really terribly wrong. But if they're just really annoying, you might just have a terrible night. And that's just the way life is in the real world. If you're on the public internet, people control you and really, Twitter, they abuse people all the time. But if you've been a member of Stitch for a while, that's not what we're about. We have a completely different mission, and actually we are building a community with the sole goal of creating a great environment for everybody. And there's one thing that I've learned over the last few years of running Stitch, and that's that you might have 100 interactions with other Stitch members on one day, but if one out of those 100, so 99 fantastic interactions, but one out of the 100 it does something to get under your skin, either they're rude to you or they post something on a forum topic about you or that you don't like, or they send you a private message that they're trying to sell you something. That's the thing you think of when you go to bed that night. You just can't get it out of your head. It seems to be human nature. We get such enrichment out of the interactions we have with other people. It's great. Social connections are so fantastic. The flip side is if those social connections are bad for some reason, they consume us. They can really, really have an outsized impact on us, because we really should be thinking about those 99 people who are fantastic, not the one person. But that's just not how it goes. So we first discovered this in the Stitch community forums, and we had to learn a lot about how to create a community-led way of moderating behavior. And we are in the process of taking some of those lessons and bringing them to the community more broadly, which is a really ambitious goal. As I said, in the real world, nothing like this exists. You might go onto Facebook and have to suffer from abuse or trolls, and we've seen all the negative stuff that happens on those sorts of sites. And it's just not acceptable. I'm sorry, I'm not going to put up with it. You're not going to put up with it. We're building something much more ambitious, as I say, and better for everybody. So here's what we're doing. So we've discovered a couple of things. One is we want to make sure that, number one, everyone understands about what the behaviors we're trying to promote, what the community stands for. And that's things like being kind, being welcoming, being inspiring, being genuine, being supportive of each other, those sorts of things. So when people are like that, and as I said, that's 99 times out of 100, we want to make sure that you can give the feedback to let people know that that's what you think about them, and then you get that feedback as well. So it'd be really, really enriching, and we want to really make sure people are understanding the positive impact they're having on each other. But please bear that in mind. Most of what I'm going to talk about now is about the things that maybe aren't so positive, but I don't want you to get the impression that that's happening all the time. It's just that when they do happen, they actually can make you feel a bit upset, and that's not what we want. So what we found in the forums is, somewhat counterintuitively, the really bad behavior is actually very easier for us to, it's much easier for us to manage, particularly when there's online communications involved, because we've got a record of what goes on. So if someone breaches our very, very extreme rules, like it could be, and this doesn't happen very often at all, but it might be, a racist comment or sexual harassment or provoking conflict or breaching our rules about commercial activity, something like that, which is a real flagrant breach of the rules. It's very easy for someone to report it, and most of the time members will see it and they'll just go, I'm going to report that. That's not on. And you might not know this, but our forums we go far beyond any other social media site, because when people flag comments, then normally they have to get reviewed. On Stitch, it gets taken down immediately because we trust our members to alert us through reporting to things that are a bad breach, because we don't want it up there, because it if someone says something that might be offensive, let's get it down. Those things are actually pretty easy to manage when they're really, really flagrant. What we found was more complicated were the more nuanced negative behavior. They might not be an outright breach, but they're the sort of person that will post something that might be just a bit insensitive, but multiple times, or a little bit rude, or just unwelcoming, just being unwelcoming to someone who comes into a conversation, or being more aggressive, things like that. We found that over time, even though those things you could never say, look, that's a clear breach, that one instance was a clear breach. Someone who does that again and again and again and again can actually be quite wearing on other people. So we came up with a system of community moderation, where everyone in the community can flag what we call unwelcome behaviors. So they're not a full breach, but they're certainly unwelcome, and we want to give that feedback. So the members who see it can flag a comment exhibiting unwelcome behavior, and if enough members have that opinion, if enough members tell you that your comments are, let's say, unwelcoming, constantly unwelcoming to people, you're going to get the feedback. And if you don't change, then eventually you're getting a warning, and then you may even actually find yourself not able to comment in those discussions anymore. And that sort of community self-moderation does a couple of things really well. But the most important thing is it stops conflict between members, because it's the system that's enforcing the rules. What we found in the forums was that when a person might see maybe an aggressive or rude comment, they would then step in to try to correct that behavior, and then it would escalate into a fight. And so one of our rules is actually no perpetuation of conflict in the community, because those things, particularly with online stuff, they tend to escalate. But we found by taking the responsibility out of the individual members' hands, we didn't put the burden on you to actually need to step in publicly or do anything like that. You just give us your opinion that this comment broke the guidelines, and then the algorithm, the system, figures it out. And it's, one comment from you or one flag from you doesn't necessarily do anything on its own, but collectively, the collective action of the community is what helps Stitch figure out, oh, this person here is actually being intentionally disruptive in a conversation, and actually they shouldn't be allowed to do that. So that's the background to how it happens in the forums, and it made a huge improvement to general behavior, because people who were getting the feedback discovered they had to change. They just couldn't mouth off at people the way they can on public internet, like Facebook and stuff like that. It's just not acceptable. Stitch has different standards that we want everyone to be aware of. So the progress we made there has now had us turning our eyes to the same sort of things in the rest of the community. And this is where you might have a private message, a conversation with someone, and it's not something that really enriches your life. It might be someone, again, let's use the example of them, they're trying to sell you something, but you might not really feel like you want to report them, or they're being rude and obnoxious. You don't feel it's a clear breach of the guidelines, but it's not something that really brightens your day. Flip side is someone who actually really does enrich your day. We'd want to give them the feedback that it was fantastic, and promote that positive behavior as well. Or you might attend an event or activity, and there might be one person who is disruptive there, or does something that's really, you just find it makes you feel uncomfortable. You may not feel comfortable about reporting it to us, but you certainly want to give some feedback. Again, your feedback alone is not going to do anything just on its own, but collectively, if we find, for example, there might be one person who's sending private messages again and again, and trying to drum up business for their travel business, or whatever. There's plenty of examples of people who might try to do that sort of thing. And if enough people say, look, no, this is actually not something I like, we're able to then, our system is able to then monitor that, collectively use that data, and determine that actually that person shouldn't be allowed to be sending so many messages, or messages at all. Same with events and activities. If an organizer is not organizing events in a way that's welcoming to new members, or say they're telling other organizers that, this is one of our guidelines that you may not be aware of, that is there is no ownership of an event or of a venue or a night. So if you, just because you host an event at a restaurant doesn't mean other Stitch members can have events at that restaurant. It stands to reason. for some reason, sometimes people become overly territorial. Those things aren't allowed in the community. Things like that. They're not huge issues, but taken over time, they can actually create conflict. And, unfortunately, I've seen these things fester. So you're going to be seeing the opportunity to provide feedback about your interactions at about an event, or it can be the organizer, the attendees, or private messaging. And again, the focus here is not on the individual. We're not saying, oh, do you like this person? You're not rating a person, you're rating behavior, because it's the behavior that we want to change. It's the behavior that we want to promote, kindness and respect and being welcoming and all that sort of stuff. And we want to give people feedback about how great it is when they do all those things. And people who aren't doing those things and doing the things we don't want to see, those unwelcome behaviors, we want to give them that feedback. And most of the time when people get feedback, they learn, they change, because there are consequences to it. The consequences might be that you're no longer able to host events if you're not going to be able to be welcoming to the people who show up, or if you're going to be disruptive at people's events, or even, we've had some more extreme examples where people just went, well, I actually didn't feel safe around this person, but I wasn't sure. Things like that. We are not physically present at events and activities. I'm not. But we need a way, I believe we need a way to make sure everyone feels always safe, not just physically safe, but emotionally safe, in a way that you have high confidence that when you turn up at an event, you are going to have a good and enriching experience. You don't need to worry about being included, being excluded, all that sort of things. And if something doesn't happen the way you want it to, you can give feedback and things can improve. I've seen it happen in other parts of the community. I've seen people who they've come in with this mindset from other areas, other websites or whatever, and you behave a certain way where it's acceptable, and they just need to know it's not acceptable. We have really, really high goals for what's possible to create for a community where everybody helps enrich each other's lives, and we've seen that happen so many times. Now we're just at that point where it's that one person out of 100 that we need to make sure they either change their behavior or we limit the amount of impact they might have on other people. Please bear in mind that if you do have a negative interaction with someone, sometimes it's because there's some stuff going on in their life. They might have just lost their job. We've all gone through coronavirus. There's so many things so many reasons why they might be a little bit short with you or stuff like that. So again, it's about feedback and giving them the opportunity to change, but also letting them realize that, they don't have carte blanche to just do anything to you just because they've had a bad day, because that then brings you down. So it's all about promoting more positive, less negative. And I tend to find that positive breeds positive and negative breeds negative. So the more that you do that's positive to someone, the more that you're going to see positive behavior in return. But the same goes for negative behavior. So if you are, aggressive or argumentative with people, then you tend to, those conflicts can tend to grow. So look, there's a lot there to digest. You're going to see some more announcements about these things here on Stitch in the coming weeks. I just wanted to highlight it and make you aware. You can always go to the Stitch support website where we will outline how the process works, whether it's for private messaging, events, activities as an attendee or an organizer, and of course the forum moderations themselves. Please remember it's always a work in progress because that's Stitch, but what we're doing is trying to create something that is really enriching. So a lot of what we need is your feedback. But collectively, we do it as a community. We are all responsible for how we make a community that enriches everybody's lives. And I'm pretty confident that together we'll make it happen. So please give us your thoughts, and particularly as the new announcements about it come out. And as always, give us your feedback about ways to improve it. And together, we'll make things fantastic. All right, that's it for me this week. Bye for now.